So this is something we're thinking about in terms of potential exam schedule. We are evaluating multiple possible schedules. The idea being one of the primary principles that we're looking at is to not place any undue burden on our accommodated applicants in any of our decision making, but also in regard to these schedules. But we wanted to share with you a potential schedule, how we could administer one day remotely. So what we would call day one of testing would start with the National MBE Day, which is a Wednesday. That has to be in person based on the NCBE's requirements. That would be on the day that it's required to be, that Wednesday, the last week of February or July. Standard applicants and the accommodated applicants starting, then accommodated applicants, depending on their schedules, might have extended time and test all the way through Friday. The day two of testing could potentially start with our content, the essays and PT, remotely the following Monday. And so that would be the first week of or August, depending on if it's a February, July exam. Our standard applicants and accommodated applicants starting that day remotely, and then testing through that Wednesday, depending on their extra time. And again, I just want to be clear, we have not settled on a schedule, evaluating a lot of other schedules that are possible to not place any undue burden on our accommodated applicants. Okay, well, probably not ready for this yet. I have some motion language we can look at, but I'm going to stop sharing so we can talk.
Does anyone have any questions? Or, of course, somebody's going to.
Yes.
So who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, Dolores and then Larry.
Okay, so I'm confused about the number of test sites in the 4 sites with 1 remote day. The 4th one, the least expensive option, it says 4 sites with 1 remote day. And then later on, we have the 3 super sites and the 3 accommodation sites. So how does that work?
That is for the model with 6 sites. And Amy, please correct me if I'm wrong. But yes, that's for, sorry, I should have mentioned that. Those were the sites we're looking at for the model with the 6 in-person sites. For the model where we use the state bar offices, 2 of those sites would be the state bar. And then 1, we've already contracted with one of the hotels, DoubleTree Orange, for accommodated applicants.
Okay, so that's a large enough hotel to be able to accommodate all of the testing accommodations requests that we usually have?
No, that's why we would need to open up our LA office and the San Francisco office to accommodate applicants to test.
Okay. In cubicles?
Oh, we have a variety of different spaces. Yes, cubicles, private offices, conference rooms, depending on whether or not someone would need a private room or if they could have a distraction reduced room.
Okay.
And the idea would be that that all state bar staff would be working remote during, other than those needing to proctor the exam or provide staff support for the exam. Everyone else would be remote, so there wouldn't be, so we would maximize all of the space available at the state bar offices.
I also want to add one more thing. So the super sites also allow testing space for standard applicants and testing accommodation applicants.
That's where that distracted or less distracting environment, distraction reduced, I think we call it, environment would fit in.
Right, reduced distraction, yes.
Do you have to negotiate with the union about having people take over somebody's desk, cubicle?
I wouldn't worry about that. We will be, we'll be able to offer up the space that we need to in the state bar offices. We just would, obviously, there are going to be some places that are confidential. We can't let people using space in the Office of Chief Trial Counsel, for example. So we just need to, we close off those spaces, but everything else we'll be able to make available.
Larry, were you done, Dolores?
So, number one, I think this, I would encourage us to save as much money as possible. So I like the, whatever that is, option 3 or 4, whichever one. And, really leave the details to the staff in terms of, how big is it and how much room do we need, and all that other kind of stuff. One of the things I would say is that, the vast majority of people taking the DAR exam today are digital natives. Okay, they're really comfortable with remote whatever, doing stuff online. So I don't really have any concerns. And the more we can go remote and save money, the better, and, you got to wonder when the MBE folks will come into the 21st century, which will be even more helpful. The only concern I have, and I don't really think there's much we can do about it, is by eliminating sites in some fairly significant population centers like San Diego and Sacramento. It's kind of a drag. Those folks are going to have to schlep. I'm sure you've done the, run the numbers, and, it might affect a number of people, but probably less than, obviously Bay Area and LA. But it is kind of, that's kind of a drag that folks will have to schlep, to get to those 2 locations. And I know that when it comes to testing accommodations, the vast majority of the issues are with people who don't have, sort of straightforward physical disabilities, like somebody in a wheelchair or something like that. But, keep in mind that folks with physical disabilities, it's harder for them to do things like having to, get on an airplane to fly, or use, take train or something like that, rather than something that's easily accessible to them. And that's the only issue I would have. I think folks with other disabilities, like ADD or whatever, that's probably not relevant, but I would just, point that out. Otherwise, I think, go for it. We got to save money. It's all about the bottom line. If we don't save money, we're in trouble. So that's it. That's my 2 cents.
Let me get my Zoom screen back. Anyone else have comments, questions?
David.
I saw David. Go ahead, David. You're muted, apparently. Still not hearing you.
Sorry, David, your audio is not coming in. No, still not. Do you want to give David a second to try to see if you can get his audio? I see
Yeah,
Alex and
okay,
Ashley also have their hands.
Ashley?
I think Alex was before me, but I can start. So I think I went to law school in Sacramento, so I have kind of obviously a slight bias on having a Sacramento testing site, but I think out of the 4 options, number 3 seems to be the most fair. I think that regardless, number 4, which is the reduction to 3 standard sites and 1 testing accommodation site, the bar offices being used, I would really caution against that option, primarily because I do see issues in requiring people to go out to testing accommodation sites at bar offices when there's also this other testing accommodation site that could offer kind of a different experience. And I don't know if we have any guidance on what that looks like, whether what that 1 testing site is going to be substantially similar to the bar office experience, and how that changes the experience for our testing accommodated students. And that's one of the reasons why I would really towards option 3. I think that offering a remote option could also address some accommodation requests that some of our students might have. And that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know if there's any guidance on one of those questions regarding the differences between option 4, testing accommodation site, and those state board offices.
Okay, Alex?
Alex?
Yeah,
can you- Oh, there
I'm
you
here.
are.
Couple of questions. What is the expected timeline as to when the state bar expects to put forth a formal proposal to the board and the Supreme Court? That's the first question. I can go through all my questions first, but let's just start with that one.
We want to bring your recommendation and these models to the board in July at their July board meeting.
And if the board approves, I guess my understanding would be then to send the proposal to the Supreme Court, and hopefully the Supreme Court would then rule on that by the end of the year. Is that accurate?
Right. Well, we have the February bar exam opens October 1st, right? So we have some time pressure to get it all sorted out.
Got it. So the expectation is then to administer one of these options, at least to try it out, one of these options beginning February 2024.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Second question. Are we fixed to considering only these four options before us?
Well, this is what we've been working on as the staff to try to look at where we can cut the most costs. I think we're not averse to other suggestions. I know the other day at our meeting on Friday, David mentioned National Guard sites. We just have this timeline as well to consider.
Okay, sounds good. Another question is, just looking at these four options, each of them contemplates in some extent and in some form of remote testing. Have we considered the likelihood that the state bar would need to pay more to ExamSoft for more in-depth testing? And, you know, and to that extent, are we now comfortable that the same technical glitches that really plagued the past several administrations during the pandemic are now summarily resolved?
So one of the models besides as is to test all in person, right? So that's the model number 2, and I can share that slide again. And then we did factor in on the cost slide, and I can show that one too, the increased costs that are incurred when we have to pay additional licenses to ExamSoft for the remote proctoring and monitoring. So, and to your final question, can we predict what technical glitches might happen in 24? I mean, that it could happen that there is an issue. What we don't know it. We know that across the remote administrations, there were administrations that had an issue, and there were administrations that had no issues. So, you know, I can't speak for ExamSoft. I imagine they're always iterating on their product, but yeah. Got
it. So I think my understanding is the Supreme Court in many ways sort of has spoken on the remote issue. The fact of the matter is we're now doing everything in person. The court certainly would have said, hey, we can continue with the remote, but you know, it didn't, right? And now everything is done in person in terms of future bar exams. What I don't want to do is put Supreme Court in a really tough position where we are only giving them one of these four options, as opposed to, you know, all four options. Because, you know, for example, if the CBE decides and approves, let's say, hey, you know, let's go with the fourth one, or the MBE as well as, so the MBE would be administered in person and essays when the PT would be done remotely, then the Supreme Court, in many ways, they would, you know, to accept this option, they would, you know, implicitly have to agree that the PT and essay will be done remotely. And so what I don't want to do is to put the Supreme Court in that position, because again, just looking at what the court has done in the past, where everything is done administered in person, I certainly think it would be prudent, I think, for us to at least provide the court with multiple options. But that being